Germaine Greer opens her seminal work by laying bare the consequences of a patriarchal society that has systematically denied women ownership of their own bodies and minds. She asserts that, from an early age, girls are taught to see themselves as objects for male consumption, their identities fashioned to please and placate men rather than to express their own desires and ambitions. This cultural programming, Greer contends, is so pervasive that many women remain unaware of how deeply it has shaped their self-perception and life choices, accepting a circumscribed existence as normal without ever questioning its origins or its validity. In exploring the roots of female subjugation, Greer delves into the role of family structures in perpetuating dependency. She describes how girls are raised to equate security with marriage and motherhood, internalizing the belief that their worth is inseparable from their ability to fulfill domestic and reproductive roles. Lessons in obedience and self-sacrifice begin at home, where the infant daughter observes her mother's deference and learns, almost instinctively, to prioritize the needs of others above her own, never learning the language of self-assertion or individual purpose. Central to Greer's analysis is the way women's sexuality is both idealized and controlled. While male sexuality is lauded as natural and uninhibited, female sexual desire is painted as dangerous or aberrant unless carefully regulated by patriarchal norms. Greer argues that this double standard not only represses genuine sexual expression but also positions women's bodies as sites of societal anxiety and moral policing. The result is a profound alienation from one's own body, where women may feel both ashamed of and enslaved to their biological functions. Marriage, Greer argues, is the primary institution through which patriarchal power is enforced. Far from being a partnership of equals, it often functions as a contract in which women surrender their autonomy in exchange for financial security and social legitimacy. Greer examines the legal history of marriage, noting how doctrines such as coverture historically stripped married women of property rights and legal personhood. Even as laws change, cultural expectations persist, making true equality within marriage an elusive dream for many. Motherhood, while celebrated as a pinnacle of female fulfillment, is subjected to a similarly critical lens. Greer acknowledges the profound bond between mother and child but warns against romanticizing maternal sacrifice to the point of self-negation. She points out that the elevation of motherhood as a woman's highest calling reinforces a binary whereby any woman who resists or rejects maternal identity is deemed abnormal or selfish, thereby narrowing the scope of legitimate female ambition. The division of domestic labor emerges as a striking feature of Greer's critique. She exposes how household work, cooking, cleaning, caregiving, is systematically devalued because it is performed by women and deemed unskilled. Greer highlights the economic dimension of this labor, demonstrating how women's invisible contributions underpin the entire capitalist system even as they remain uncompensated and unrecognized. This inequity, she argues, is fundamental to maintaining women's economic dependence on men. As the narrative progresses, Greer turns from diagnosis to prescription, urging women to reclaim control over their lives through what she calls body politics. This involves rejecting the passive roles they have been assigned and embracing their own sexual and creative energies. By doing so, women can dismantle the internal barriers erected by patriarchal ideology and forge new identities grounded in self-determination rather than in service to male desire. Greer also interrogates the artificial divide between sex and gender, arguing that what we consider feminine traits are not rooted in biology but are socially constructed to maintain male dominance. She draws on anthropological and historical examples to show how various societies have imposed rigid gender roles that limit women's freedoms. By understanding gender as a mutable performance rather than a fixed destiny, women can begin to subvert the expectations that confine them. A powerful section of the book is devoted to the politics of sexual liberation. Greer challenges the notion that sexual freedom for women can be achieved simply by adopting the behaviors of men, such as promiscuity or sexual conquest. Instead, she calls for a radical reimagining of sexual relationships based on mutual respect, consent, and genuine pleasure. This vision of sexuality as a site of empowerment contrasts sharply with prevailing models that prioritize male satisfaction and female compliance. Greer's critique extends into the realm of consciousness raising and collective action. She underscores how isolated individual efforts to resist patriarchy, while important, must be coupled with broader social movements that challenge institutional power. She highlights the early feminist consciousness-raising groups as pivotal in helping women recognize the shared nature of their oppression and in developing strategies for political change. Solidarity, she insists, is the catalyst for genuine transformation. The interconnection between patriarchy and capitalism receives careful attention, as Greer illustrates how consumer culture exploits female insecurity to sell products and uphold gender norms. She examines everything from fashion and cosmetics to self-help literature, revealing how industries profit by perpetuating the myth that women must continuously strive for unattainable ideals of beauty and behavior. Breaking free from these marketing machinations, she argues, is essential for women's liberation. In dissecting the psychological underpinnings of female submission, Greer tackles the influence of psychoanalytic theories that frame women's development around male desire. She critiques Freudian and Jungian models for pathologizing female sexuality and for positioning women as perpetually incomplete without a male counterpart. By rejecting these frameworks, Greer encourages women to construct new narratives that honor their own experiences and aspirations without reference to male norms. Greer also envisions concrete alternatives to traditional household dynamics, advocating for communal living arrangements and cooperative childcare as ways to redistribute unpaid labor. She draws inspiration from communal societies and experimental feminist collectives that have sought to blur the lines between private and public spheres, thereby liberating women from the isolation and overwork often inherent in the nuclear family model. Education and intellectual development occupy a significant portion of Greer's argument. She laments the ways in which women's education has historically been tailored to produce compliant wives rather than critical thinkers or innovators. By demanding curricula that foster autonomy, creativity, and critical analysis, women can develop the tools to dismantle oppressive structures and to contribute meaningfully to all fields of knowledge and endeavor. Throughout the text, Greer's tone remains unapologetically confrontational, reflecting her belief that polite appeals and incremental reform are insufficient to uproot entrenched systems of domination. Her writing pulses with urgency and wit, designed to shock complacent readers into awareness and action. This mix of scholarly research and impassioned rhetoric creates a galvanizing force that has resonated with generations of feminists and continues to provoke debate. In her concluding chapters, Greer issues a rallying cry for women to reject the eunuch identity and to take full possession of their bodies, labor, and minds. She insists that the journey toward self-ownership is neither linear nor easy, requiring constant vigilance against the subtle encroachments of patriarchal ideology. Yet she leaves readers with a vision of a world in which women live as free agents, their destinies in their own hands, unbound by the limitations imposed by centuries of male rule.